I say the word nature, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably something like this. Beautiful, out-of-the-way places, full of life and untouched. Someplace wild, pristine, and for many, inaccessible. For most of us, our day-to-day reality is a bit more like this. Yeah. About half of the world and 80% of Canadians live in urban areas. We have become an urban species, and many people don't have the means to get beyond the city limits, making the idea of this just that, an idea. Something we could admire from our Instagram feeds and then forget. The thing is, our minds and bodies don't want to forget. Do you feel calmer when you walk beneath the shade of a tree-lined street? Does your heart speed up with pleasure when a butterfly floats across your path? There's a reason so many of us have pictures of animals and landscapes as our lock screens and can't stop watching cat videos. It's called biophilia. It's the desire to connect with living things other than ourselves. And despite having built a society where we tend to trick ourselves into thinking we don't need nature, that desire remains innate in all of us. But there's a difference between being in nature and actually making a connection with it. For my generation, and the ones before it, being in nature is still fairly common. I know lots of people who go camping, riding, paddling, even hiking through natural areas. You're surrounded by wilderness in the midst of all of these activities. But I'd be willing to bet you're really not making much of a connection with it, or really learning all that much about it. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying these activities are bad. In fact, any time spent in nature is time well spent. But I would like to challenge you to take your relationship with the living world just one step further and get to know it a little bit better. With a few changes to how you move through your life, you can feel better, be more creative, and maybe even save the world. You just have to do two things. Slow down and tune into the world around you. Take these two steps and a whole universe will open up to you, just waiting to be discovered. I know it's true because I've lived it. I came to nature young, through my love of drawing animals. As I got older, and out of my horse face, birds became my thing. And as you've heard, especially owls. As I got older, I wanted to learn more about how these animals lived, and so that pushed me all the way through to a doctorate in ecology. As my awareness expanded, I wanted to share those experiences with others. So I started volunteering as a nature interpreter and trying to recruit people to help me with my research. And owls are a pretty easy sell, being alternately majestic and adorable. So you can imagine I really had no trouble getting people out into the wilderness with me. And I gotta say, it's so rewarding to that moment when someone hears or catches a glimpse of their first owl, that spark of wonder that's lit within them. It was especially amazing if I could plunk one down in their hands. That was life-changing for some. That moment where you make a connection with something wild, something you've never seen before, something you might not have even known existed, is truly magical. But what if you can't find something as charismatic as an owl? Can you still find joy in nature? It's a question I've wrestled with a lot over the last 20 years that I've been an interpreter, and I've come to the realization that you don't need to have grand wilderness experiences with big wildlife sightings to make connections and find joy in nature. Everything from a chewed up branch, a footprint in the snow, tiny mosses, bugs, they all have their stories. You just have to be willing to listen. Wilderness and nature are not the same thing. Wilderness can be hard to get to. Nature is everywhere. You just have to notice it. Okay, let's start with an easy one. Take a tree, for example. You've probably seen several of them today, and you probably didn't even really realize it. They come in all sorts of shapes and sizes and colors. Some are grand, awe-inspiring figures. Others have a little growing to do. But every single one of them is amazing. Aspen are one of my favorites. You can find them all over the northern hemisphere. You usually see them in clumps where their grayish bark blends into the background. But next time you see one, and you will, take a close look at that bark. Unlike most trees, you'll notice that it's actually pretty thin and kind of green. That green comes from chloroplasts. They're the same organelles that you find in the leaves, photosynthesizing sugars from carbon dioxide. So aspen bark, unlike most tree bark, is alive. And it's kind of like me, it's pale and it burns easy. So the tree has had to come up with a solution for that. Run your hand along that bark and you'll pick up a bunch of white powder. That is the tree's sunscreen. It's called Aspen Bloom. And it's actually a collection of dead cells that just accumulate on the surface of the tree. It reflects the sunlight off the bark and it protects the cells below from UV damage. But Aspen Bloom's not the only secret this tree is hiding. Take a look at this woodlot. How many individuals do you see? Yeah, you've been counting for a while. The answer is one, because aspen are clones. Each individual tree is actually just a stalk rising up out of a mass of interconnected roots, like one blade of grass in a giant lawn. While each individual tree, which is known as a rammet, might only survive for 100 years, that root system will go on for millennia, passing nutrients and information back and forth and shooting up new growth to colonize new areas and to fill the voids. So trees are a great place to start, and they can keep you busy for quite a long time. But there is so much more out there. In fact, some of the creatures that we tend to ignore, even sometimes avoid, are some of the most fascinating. Take pigeons, for example. Now, I'm sure most of you probably don't get as excited about pigeons as I do, but you should, because pigeons are awesome. And they're so much more than flying rats. Now, they're not any dirtier than any other city bird, but they are a little rat-like, just not in the way you think. You see, pigeons, like rats, feed their young milk. No, they didn't suddenly develop mammary glands, but they put their crop to the same use. The crop is a bag halfway down the esophagus. It's normally used for storing food. But once the young hatch, both males and females start producing a milky liquid from the lining of that crop. All the babies have to do is stick their head down mom or dad's throat and start drinking. And like mammal milk, it's high in protein and fat, and it conveys immune antibodies from both the parents to the young. Pigeons also have super senses. The retinas of their eyes have up to 5 different photopigments, each collecting different wavelengths of light, which compared to our 3. So that means that they can see a whole spectrum of colors that we can only imagine. It kind of puts that whole black, blue, white, gold thing to rest completely. They can actually see right into the ultraviolet spectrum, and they can pick up on information that you and I would need specific equipment to detect. They can also pick up the magnetic field of the Earth. They can detect changes in direction, polarity, and intensity with such precision that they can use it as a map. This is how homing pigeons find their way back over hundreds of kilometers from unfamiliar locations. With a bit of practice, you'll start noticing things that have never even registered before, like these blotches of colors that show up on trees and rocks and sometimes even buildings. If you have noticed them, it might not even occurred to you that they're alive, and they're one of the coolest land organisms out there. These are lichens, and they're not one organism, they're 2. You're looking at fungal farmers. The color comes from algae or cyanobacteria, nestled within the mycelia of the fungus. These tiny organisms, known as photobionts, have a cozy place to live with water and nutrients while they photosynthesize sugar and oxygen for their hosts. This mutualistic relationship makes it possible for lichens to live in some extreme areas and upwards of thousands of years. Just trying to ID them all could keep you busy for almost as long. So nature truly is everywhere, and it comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes. I haven't even scratched the surface, so where do you start? Short answer, go outside. But it's more than that. Go outside with purpose. Next time you're out, give yourself a little bit more time, put away the phone, and look around. Take the headphones out and listen. Each time you're going somewhere, try to find 3 things you've never noticed before. It could be anything: a funny-shaped leaf, a bird, a bug, even a sound you've never heard before. Once something catches your attention, try to learn more about it. That's where these become your friends. With dozens of nature apps, many of them free, you can turn your smartphone into a very powerful field guide. You can also use it to take pictures, access social media full of experts who are more than happy to help you with your discoveries. Once that switch is flipped, you won't be able to turn it off. You won't want to. It'll be like you've been living your entire life in black and white and somebody just turned on the color. You'll feel better too. A growing body of work shows that nature is good for us. Just being in it lowers anxiety and boosts your immune system. Studies done in Japan and Germany have found that people walking through forests show lower blood pressure and cortisol levels than people who are living in urban areas, so they have lower stress. Meaningful connections are even better. Nature is messy, it's dynamic. It'll boost your creativity and alleviate mental fatigue. So get out there. Get to know your natural neighbors. Learn their stories and find your place among them. Make friends with the fungi. Commune with the caterpillars. You'll nurture a sense of place and a love you won't be able to ignore. And people protect what they love. So people who interact with nature, regardless of their age, are more likely to make decisions in life to protect the environment. We're facing some big problems as a planet, and understanding how the living world works and our place among it is critical to solving those problems. Ecoliteracy is not just for scientists, it's for everyone, because we all have decisions to make. But reconnecting with nature is not a political statement. It's a win-win life choice where one can feel better, be more creative, have fun, and take better care of our planet. Imagine what a world would look like if we all slowed down just a little bit and tuned back into nature. Looks pretty good from where I'm standing. So get out there and start exploring.